All right. How's everybody doing? All right. We get too quiet or too calm, I'm going to make everybody stand up and do something weird, so don't get too complacent. My name is David Akhtari. I am the CEO and founder of ERC DEX, or ERC dEXCHANGE. And with me is John Maddox. He's running finance for us. I'm also, thank you, Eric. I'm also one of the new co-organizers of this meetup group. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of each other. I'm supposed to be thanking Mobility X and Capital Factory for hosting this event and letting us use this wonderful space. I want this to be interactive and kind of conversational. We're not here to pitch you anything. We're not here to sell you anything. This is more of a lessons learned. Having said that, this deck does come from our sort of marketing pitch deck. It's a cut-down, re-swizzled version of that, so it's a little glossy and whatnot. But we have lessons learned, demo, and all of that at the end. So, with that, let's get the ball rolling. Also, I do have prizes for participation as we go. Really exciting prizes on it. All right. So, as I said, we're going to run through a modified version of our sort of pitch marketing deck. It is just generally informational that we send out to potential investors and interested parties and such. But then we're going to get into specific lessons learned of how we've evolved over this process of building a decentralized exchange and what we've kind of gone through and some of the things that hopefully you'll be able to learn from if you're planning on building something yourself. And then we'll do a demo Q&A. So, briefly, let's run through what the hell this is. Does everybody know what an ERC20 token is? No. Okay. So, I didn't think everyone would, so I put this little slide together here. So, a currency is just a medium of exchange for goods and services, right? Everyone's familiar with currency, not too hard to understand. Security is something that is regulated that essentially you have an expectation of future cash flow. And the reason that these two sort of basic concepts are on here is because it's really easy to get confused when you're talking tokens in the Ethereum space, because oftentimes they can be one of these things if you're not careful. And that's important when you're doing an ICO and that sort of thing, because you can get slapped pretty hard for making a security in this particular case. So tokens, generally as a concept, I like to liken to the tokens that we all grew up with, or shit, I'm old. Some of us grew up with playing video games in arcades and using the Chuck E. Cheese token, or the actually airline miles are a good analog as well. So when you're talking about tokens on the Ethereum blockchain, if you're building a true utility token, it's going to be looking a lot more like a Chuck E. Cheese token or an airline mile than it is a security or a traditional currency.
And just to update that a little bit, if you go to Dave & Buster's and you put points on a card, it's the same thing. You just don't have the physical token anymore. It's the exact same concept.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, I've been there, so not that old. Okay, so finally, the reason that I am emphasizing ERC20 tokens is because it's a special kind of token on the Ethereum blockchain, and it conforms to a specific standard. And so we can take a quick look at that. But essentially, does everyone understand, when I'm talking about a token on the Ethereum blockchain, do you know what I'm talking about? It is a contract. What's underpinning that is a smart contract that's been deployed to the Ethereum blockchain that the values that it holds can be assigned to addresses on the blockchain. So you can have an address, and if the smart contract says that you have 3 of whatever token that is, then you hold those 3 tokens. So that contract, if it conforms to the ERC20 interface specification, it is therefore an ERC20 token. Why does that matter? That matters because it makes it much easier for these values to be traded amongst people. And so 0x, which we're going to get to in just a second, built a protocol and some tooling to enable and facilitate this decentralized trade. It is upon the 0x protocol that we built our exchange. So hopefully that's all starting to come together. Any questions so far about any of this stuff? Okay. So as I said, it standardizes token contracts, makes things more interoperable and easier to use, and they play together better. One interesting thing to note, if you're not familiar with this space, you may not know that Ether itself is not ERC 20 compliant. But that's a problem that's easily solved by what's called wrapping Ether into an ERC 20 compliant contract. And you're essentially just trading one for one Ether for one what's called wrap Ether or WETH, W-E-T-H. And when you're done trading your WETH, then you can just go back and trade it back to regular Ether. Does that make sense?
Then a quick comment here on kind of what we're showing here as far as the ICOs. I'm sure you're all aware, there's been a lot of fundraising going on with ICOs. I think we eclipsed 1.5 billion just in ICOs, just on some money raised this year. And then what we're showing here is kind of the amount of ICOs, and they'll happen in the second half of the year. And there are a couple things driving this. Really, probably the primary one is the appreciation in Bitcoin and Ether. And what's happening is investors are just diversifying assets. That's creating a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and use this kind of innovative, you want to call it financing, but innovative space to raise funds for their companies. And then what we like about Ethereum, and when I say Ethereum, I'm basically saying ERC20 tokens, is that it has been the majority of the raise. If you look at all the announced and completed ICOs, it's up to about 34%. 34% are announced or have been completed. Yet another 3% for those that have just been announced and haven't been completed yet. Another ICOs are 59%. One thing that is difficult is aggregating market data. It comes from a lot of different sources. You'll see these numbers in different places. But I pulled these from ICO Stats and Smith & Crown. Smith & Crown is a good industry site. They aggregate a lot of good information on the industry. So I think we'll link to that in here. And the other thing that's interesting, of the ICOs that have been issued, the raise has been about 1.5 billion, but if you look at the market cap, what they all trade for, that's up around 9 billion. So this is a very material space, and it's very much an emerging asset class.
And so you might be asking yourself, why do we give a shit about ICOs? Well, if you're going to have an ICO and you're going to do it on the Ethereum blockchain, the best way to do that is by issuing an ERC20 compliant token, because you want a liquid market for your token that you're issuing, right? And the best way to make it a liquid market is have it trade widely. And if it's ERC20 compliant, it'll be more widely traded and supported by the different exchanges and distributed exchanges and all of that. So this space is important and it's relevant, and for us as an exchange, we expect to be seeing a lot of volume for newly issued ICO tokens.
So then why the steep drop off in percentage of Ethereum-based tokens from October going down to December 2017? It's a big drop off there.
Yeah, it's just truly when they were scheduled. And I'm willing to bet when I put this together, they probably didn't have that many scheduled out at that time. But I agree that it's a steep drop off.
Yeah, no, this particular chart is a little bit old, about a month old. Yeah.
When you said it's not exactly financing, how does this differ from other financing raises?
Well, I think the question gets back to the prior slide. If the SEC is going to come down and say that the token is considered an investment used specifically for financing. So when you put tokens together, there should be a utility behind them. There should be a use for them other than just as a way to raise funds. If it's purely a fundraising device that needs to be registered with the SEC, and then you kind of limit who you can raise funds from. And you'll see that when you read about ICOs. like some investors or some entrepreneurs to be like, I can only raise these overseas. I couldn't, raise them in the U.S. I couldn't raise them in Canada, specifically for that reason, because they're getting concerned about if the SEC is going to come in and regulate their token.
Okay.
A lot of it has to do with just Glenn invested in a few of these ICOs, and it comes down to on the day that could become to do the public sale, that the actual utility of that token is available. So if there's platforms or whatever the token's going to be utility for, if it's not there, then it can't go public. Right? So this is like, we work with, or I dealt with Kool-Aid a lot, so that's usually what you'll hear from the conservative side. To be like, so,
yeah, if you're thinking about doing an ICO, you have to be very, very careful. Because we referenced in a previous slide the Howey test. The Howey test under security. And the most important thing, and the first thing you think about when you're doing this, how many of you have raised funds as an entrepreneur? Okay, so it's a pain in the ass, right? I mean, it is a full-time job, and you give up so much of your beloved company that you don't want to part with, and it's so hard. And then you look at the ICO market and you go, oh my God, these guys are giving millions of dollars for free. Like, there's nothing there. And it looks so attractive until you go out and try and pitch an investor and say, an investor that's not already in the space. An investor that's not already in the space says, that's great, but what do I get out of it? And if he's not a speculator, there's not much to answer him with. So then you think, well, maybe I can give him a little bit of the revenue that we get. Well, you just created a security. So it's a slippery slope. It's a really dangerous thing to do because the SEC will come down on this in this space. And it's just a question of when. Yeah?
By your definition of a security, would a token that rewards other tokens for usage be defined as a security as well?
That rewards
such
other
as
tokens.
The metal currency that gives users, an inflated number of currencies that you consider.
So I think this is the point in the talk where I say I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice, so seek your own counsel. However, it's been my experience that if the SEC can say that you're providing somebody a token and that somebody then can expect some sort of value in the future from that token that is not tied to their effort, that's probably going to, by the Howey test, probably going to be ruled a security.
Thank you.
So these guys who are launching these ICOs can get in trouble if they're seen as a security. But are you guys at all concerned about trading securities?
Yes.
Because that requires regulation too.
Yeah. So we have a section later in the talk about ethics and considering. We don't get deep in regulation, and we have talked to our counsel about, do we need to register as broker-dealer or as whatever? And the current thinking, and this is very much, in my opinion, kind of speculation at this point, as much as lawyers will speculate. They say that since it's non-custodial, the way that we do it, then we don't have to register as broker-dealer. But
as a matchmaker,
we're if you really break it down, we're a glorified Craigslist.
yeah.
Right? I mean, so, but that could change. That really could change. So we'll see. That's one of the crazy things about this space is you think you've got a direction 1 minute and the next it's changed because of some condition in the market. So law doesn't move that fast, but the consequences are much bigger if you get it wrong. So
one question. So today, when a company issues ICO, are they putting those tokens on Ethereum, or I thought they were all putting their private blockchain?
So there are two ways to do it, right? You can create your own blockchain, which is a much bigger project, or you can simply write an ERC 20 compliant token on the Ethereum blockchain and do your ICO. Now, it really boils down to what is your use case, right? If it really makes sense for you to create your own blockchain because your specific need requires its own blockchain, then yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
So typically, in your experience, what percentage of users use private blockchain versus use an ERC20 and put it on Ethereum, for example?
Well, I think if you go back to the slide that kind of shows the percentage of what's getting issued. So I think it was like 37% on the ERC20. I think the other thing is with some of these data points, the other platforms, not all of them are meant to be traded. So it's I think if you really kind of looked at the tokens that are meant to be traded, it's actually that percentage a little bit higher. But just to answer your question, you're right, the number of 37%.
Yeah. There are tons of other platforms where you can get issued tokens that have nothing to do with Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely true.
I think some of those platforms, they don't have like the smart contract capabilities.
Some of them do, some of them don't.
Right.
Some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them have a limited non-Turing set specifically for issuing tokens, and that's it.
Yep.
So they're just smart enough.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So briefly, just to run through the evolution of exchanges. Centralized exchanges are the ones that we're all pretty much familiar with. If you've ever done any trading online, you've probably used a centralized exchange. As you probably then know, you have to actually deposit everything into the exchange. It then becomes custodian of your assets. And who was around for Mt. Gox? Who lost money at Mt. Gox? Yeah.
I was born.
Yeah, those are the good old days, right? So in case, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Mt. Gox was a very big Bitcoin exchange back in, anybody? 2011? Okay. 2012. I want to say meltdown happened in 13? Was it 11? 13. And I'll tell you, it was really attractive because the difference in exchange rate, in price, between Gox and some of the other exchanges was significant. And it wasn't until you actually looked in the forums and see that, people haven't been able to get their money out for weeks, months, whatever, it became clear why the difference in prices was so big. Until it all just imploded, and who knows where that money went. But that's the problem with centralized exchanges, right? You have to trust them that they'll not run away with your money or get hacked or you name it. So then everybody said, let's do decentralized exchanges. And who's used Ether Delta? Who here has crawled over the glass that is using Ether Delta? Yeah. So that's a completely on-chain solution. You find that they put their order book on-chain, you do settlement on-chain, everything is on-chain, and it's slow as hell, and it's painful. So 0x came along and said, maybe there's a better way to do this. Maybe we can create what's called a relay, where we have the order book off-chain and let this DApp essentially do what it's best at of pairing people up, and then when we want to settle, we settle on-chain, peer-to-peer, middle. And so that's what we are. That's what we do. We are a relay. The best part about it is you don't need to trust each other. As long as you find each other through a relay, you can trade, and it's atomic, and it works.
How do you address the issue with, like when you can't fulfill an order, right? You're like, I want to buy whatever it is, and there's no one.
So great question. So liquidity is going to be an issue, and that is the thing that we all focus on as relayers. And as traders, if you're trading in something that's thinly traded, liquidity is going to be an issue. So we have a couple of different ways to handle that. The maybe least trader-friendly way of handling that is requiring you to use a base pair. So you have to trade out of, if you want A-B pair, you have to trade through C to do both sides of the trade. Does that make sense? Because there's more liquidity in A and C and B and C than there is A and B.
Then who takes the risk? Then you guys?
The risk of what?
Well, what happens if between the time you're trying to say I need to exchange into B?
The trader would be taking on that risk. We're not involved. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not involved in the actual trade. So because you're dealing with other traders out there. All we are is an order book at the end of the day.
You're just posting their trades on the order book.
Right. Right. It's glorified pricing.
Where does the pricing information come from to actually structure the trades and know that you're getting fair price?
So that's a good question. So you can look on the order book and see what it's trading at currently on this market, on this relay, right? And as we grow,
so it's similar to like level 2 quotes in the equity world, or
it's similar, yeah. So this is all kind of tied together, right? Because we have our order book that you can look at and see who's trading directly with us. We are also working on something called Aqueduct, which is our protocol and tool set for other relayers to send their orders to us and vice versa. So we will have a network of relayers. So it's a much deeper liquidity market than if we were standalone, right?
You say that's your protocol?
That's ours, yes. So we're publishing that. If you're curious about it, well, we can talk about it later, but it's going to be Aqueduct. We'll have information on our website about it, all documentation, but it's an API, it's a WebSockets implementation, preventing system, all that. Yes?
So who's running the contracts that are actually run on the chain?
That's all based on the 0x protocol. We use the 0x contracts.
Okay, so 0x is writing the contracts that ultimately you guys end up deploying?
Yes. Yes. We strongly believe that they're doing it the right way, and we want to promote that as an industry standard. And so, yeah, we're using that. Now, as we evolve as a product, we're going to be adding as we evolve as a platform, we're going to be adding other products, including derivatives and margin trading and short selling. Those are going to be based on the dYdX protocol, and we're going to talk more about that later. Okay. Yes?
Where's the pricing data coming from?
So the pricing data is going to be coming from our own market. What do you mean?
Is that like an Oracle or is it a middleware that provides?
No, just the order book on our side. It's our own order book.
I see.
Yeah. So when we get to the demo, you'll see where is the market, where is it trading? Like it's our market, or that of our relay network through Aqueduct. Other questions?
Yeah, where in standard trading do you make money, not derivatives or the margin? You're in this.
So 0x, the 0x protocol specifies a handful of things. One of those is the fee. And you can choose as a relayer how you want to set the fee structure. 0x is based on the maker-taker model. So we kind of abstract that away from the user because we don't think everybody understands that. But essentially under the covers, we will figure out, and we haven't figured this out yet, in all honesty, what we're going to set that up as. Different relayers have it done different ways. And the networking through Aqueduct will also add a layer of complexity there because we're going to be doing fee sharing with other relayers. But we've seen it as a percentage of the trade. We've seen it as flat fee. There is no, it's a Wild West right now.
Can I set up some kind of node that's in your network and helps you with liquidity and I can make money off of this thing? Is that how it's
entirely possible, yes. And actually, I was going to mention this later, but this came up in conversation earlier. We are actively looking for people who want to be liquidity providers in this market, not just for our relay, but for the network that we're putting together. So if that's you and you're interested in doing that, let me know. And I'll have my contact info and stuff, I think, up there. But, I think I got it on the slide somewhere. All right, so getting specifically into the 0x protocol. And this is kind of a deep hole, deep rabbit hole, so I don't want to go too far down here. If you're curious about it, 0xproject.com, you can get all kinds of information on it. But for those who are interested, these dApps are the relayers, essentially. And actually, it doesn't have to be a relayer. What's interesting about 0x, we can use this for other use cases, but in this example, we're going to say that it's relayers. It uses the exchange contract that 0x wrote, which runs through a proxy and then does the trading for you. One of the drawbacks to this model is you have to actually give that proxy, you have to give it what's called an allowance. which means that it adds extra steps in the trading process, and we'll see that in the demo. But that's one of the drawbacks. Also, 0x is a distributed sort of DAO organization, which is has everybody heard of 0x prior to today? Some people, yes, no. Maybe familiar with the token ZRX. ZRX is how we collect our fees. It's also a governance token, and so it allows us to weigh in on what happens with the protocol, and so the multi-sig wallet or DAO portion of that speaks to the governance that I kind of left off the slide. But yeah, so we already talked about all this sort of stuff. 0x as a team has been great for us. For those of you who are thinking about building a relayer, reach out to 0x. They're fantastic. Reach out to us too. We'd like to network with you. And this basically just, again, kind of shows the underpinnings of how the trades would actually be executed. So this is just intended to give you a little bit of context around how exchanges are working these days, and we're kind of entering here at the far right end. It's Relay. Radar is currently up on mainnet in beta. Ocean has not yet gone live. They've talked a lot about being a liquidity sort of focused relay. We haven't heard anything from them since then. There are a couple of others that have gone live but aren't doing much as far as marketing goes.
The other thing that's kind of interesting thing about this, if you add all the numbers here, these are the market leaders, it only adds up about 60%. So that means there's 40% of the market that's still being serviced by other exchanges. And there's about 57 smaller exchanges that are out there doing that. What that means is you have a fragmented market. So that means there's going to be some competition on price, but also means you can kind of differentiate yourself based on your UI and other protocols. So that's one thing that's you get excited about, is that there's a real opportunity here to come in and build something.
Do you think that as time goes on, these centralized exchanges will their expense structure will get much lower and their security will get higher?
It's certainly possible.
There's no getting around it. Centralized is centralized. I mean, unless they go full decentralized, you still have this. There's a segment of the market that just won't trust them. And so that's who we're essentially appealing to the most.
Is there any risk that like Amazon or Google gets in on being an exchange?
Sure.
And then it's just over, because we all trust Amazon.
Well, I think there was like Overstock.com, of all companies, like they bought an exchange in 2015, and they kind of sat on it for a while. And they just came back 2 days ago and announced that it's called T0. And what that means referring to is the settlement time, because in equity trades, there's the settlement time of T plus 3 days, 4 days, 2 days. So they branded it T0, so it's not 0x, to make that clear. But the point is that they're an SEC regulated exchange. So they're kind of going in the same direction that we're headed. So it's very possible to have other players move in just the nature of the space.
Yeah.
Long term, though, you see a lot of like network relays is still a factor in 10 years versus centralized?
Yeah, so there are a lot of interesting things that can be done with network relays. And so we saw China shut down some centralized exchanges, right? We saw them actually just, that's your government risk. With a relay, it's a little bit harder. And so we've looked at longer term, how would we structure specifically Aqueduct so that it wouldn't need to know who it's partnering with necessarily out of the gates. And as long as it follows the protocol and we can build sufficient trust in the protocol, it makes it more government shutdown proof and just makes it more decentralized in the ethos of Ethereum and the way the blockchain works. So I don't see it necessarily as a bad thing, by the way. If Amazon were to come in as a centralized exchange, I think that's a good thing, especially if they're competing with us, because that's just validated everything that we've done. And again, there is a segment of the market that will prefer us over Amazon. And by the way, Amazon is not hack-proof by any stretch. So,
And the other thing we think about is that's also a potential exit for us.
Right.
So it's going to be in Trailblazer, right? Yeah.
As a decentralized exchange, you still have to go through the same kind of KYC and AML procedures?
No. Because we're non-custodial.
Okay.
That's our current bet.
So can you trade any currency, any crypto on your exchange?
It's only ERC 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's dictated by 0x.
Right.
Now,
I was a bit confused with the comparisons.
Understandable. It's this deck was put together for people who don't know anything about this space. So we kind of hacked it down a little bit. But long term, would we like to be able to do cross chain and all kinds of things? Absolutely, of course, because that opens up our market. But in the near term, we're focused on 0x.
There's one project that could probably do that called the Ledger Protocol.
Yes.
Are you guys based actually like in the States, or are you guys like incorporated in Cayman or Singapore?
16th floor.
Or on the blockchain.
What's that?
Or on the blockchain.
Or on the blockchain. Yes.
Ether Delta, I'd like to throw a little shade on them. They're using Cloudflare for DDoS protection now. So they're using a centralized service. So I consider them centralized now.
That's pretty funny.
We've had a bit of internal debate about where to classify everything.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Also, Amazon could be thought of as a large exchange because AWS is serving both GDAX and Coinbase.
Yeah. They've certainly got bets in that space then.
Actually, the Circle guys claim they provide the most liquidity to all of crypto. They're doing it, of course, they have their trader system that you have to have like millions of dollars just to join. Their minimum size trade is like 100K. And so they say they're providing most of the liquidity in the crypto space, just nobody knows about it because you can't get to it if you're a normal dude.
They're just a dark pool and nobody...
Yeah, but their protocol is coming out, their SDK is coming out by the end of the year. Centrate, CENTRE.io. You read about it. But it's still going to be centralized through them, so it's not a decentralized platform.
Yeah.
It seems to me like there'll be other projects developed on 0x protocol, and there's some other DX projects that exist, but that's still being developed now, like Hyper and AirSwap. So how do you plan to differentiate the company from the pack eventually when you have all different players?
It's a good question. So one of the benefits of 0x is that it's an open protocol and they provide great tooling and they're very supportive. One of the drawbacks of 0x is it's an open protocol, they provide great tooling and they're very supportive. Right? So it comes down to differentiating based on product, differentiating based on liquidity, differentiating based on the things that you can control. I know that there will be people in their basements building relays. I don't know that they're going to be very successful because there are a handful of things that maybe they're underestimating. One is team, by far. An individual can absolutely spin up a relay, without a doubt. An individual may not be able to do all the things that they need to make that relay successful. The second thing is network. We intend to dominate the relayer network. I should reword that. We intend to lead the relayer network through our Aqueduct protocol, through our Aqueduct tool set, and essentially build what becomes a sort of federation of relayers. That's our goal, that's our vision. We've spoken with a handful of the relayers that have already gone public, and they are very interested in this, and so we're going to develop that over time and see how it goes. The final way of differentiating there is the product set. So dYdX, we've been talking with Antonio at dYdX. We are trying to get positioned to have our product set ready so that when they publish their smart contract set for derivatives, for the various derivatives and margin and short selling products, that we are ready to go out of the gates. So that is the very next thing we're focused on after the basic relay. So I think that's how we're going to win this game.
So one question. So from a software standpoint, what are your products? So you have an exchange, and is there like a DApp that runs on mobile devices or just a web front end?
You just hit on one thing that I forgot to add to my list of differentiators. Is feature sets like mobile support and hardware wallet support, things like that maybe not everybody's thought of. So the answer is yes. We are planning on putting mobile support through Tashi and through Status IM when they get their stuff together. So that is a feature set that we got built into the roadmap for this product. And hardware support is coming as well. We've already started testing with Professor and NanoS.
So these guys will kind of work like the miners in a way, like will keep it decentralized.
Who?
Whoever is going to support your.
The other relays, you mean?
Yeah.
So the other relays are just other order books out there in the world that are doing their own marketing, running their own show. The idea is we share orders across all of our order books to provide additional liquidity that each one of us individually would not otherwise have. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, I guess worst thing happened, like you guys had to shut down, right? How does the show keep running?
If we had to shut down, they just keep sharing liquidity amongst themselves.
I think he's asking like who runs the relays, like do people like just download the relay software and like on their own node?
No, this is web based. This is a DApp. This is a web based DApp.
So does it connect to like where does the order book live? Like where is it stored?
So okay, I should have maybe well you can see the this is the very bad description. This is a web application. This is a server and client web application that is a relay.
And do you host those?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that's a good question. So the relay itself is not decentralized. That's the whole advantage of using a relay. I know it's weird, but it's the advantage of using a relay over using something like Ether Delta, which the order book, everything is on a chain. Let the technology do what it's best at, right? So a web application is best at matching people and moving fast and dealing with quick market changes. The blockchain is best at recording what's going on in history and dealing with the actual transactions.
What forces people to pay your relay fees?
What forces them to?
Yeah, the trading fees.
The 0x protocol does.
Okay, so it's like built into like your contract that like we want this fee.
It's not our contract. It's So I can walk through when we get to the demo. I can specify how things are happening. But essentially, let's go through a quick example. You, as a maker, would come to the website and say, "I have token A. I want token B, and I want to charge 1.5 token A for it, whatever." Right? So then you through our UI, you essentially create what is an order that is nothing more than a JSON object that specifies your address, token A, the maker token, the taker token, the fee recipient, which is us, the fee amount, which is specified by our application.
In ZRX.
Sorry?
In ZRX.
In ZRX, yeah. And then that gets posted to our order book and then distributed to the network. And then somebody comes along and says, "I need token A, I've got token B, that seems like a good price, let's do it." And then it just happened. Yeah?
Would you consider hosting, so I mean, if there's like a debate, if something is a DApp, and it's not hosted using a decentralized store for a while, like IPFS or something,
I think IPFS would be a really cool application of this. I just don't know enough about it. Mm-hmm. So if we could serve the static files through IPFS. And if you don't know what IPFS, Interplanetary File System, is, how many of you watch Silicon Valley? It is the new application of Pied Piper's technology of storing little bits and files everywhere. So someone's trying to make that a reality in the form of IPFS. I think it would be interesting to put our static stuff, our front end there, but our back end, we have to have there are parts of this that cannot be decentralized in a reasonable way, in a performant way, which gets back to let the technology do what it does best. So that's how we're structuring it this way. But I like the idea of using IPFS if we can get it.
How quickly do market orders fulfill? Is it pretty much real time, or is it that delay, like on-chain?
We're not live yet, so I don't know. I can tell you that Radar is live. So we have an alpha, or we'll talk about this at the end of the thing, but we have an alpha that we're trying to recruit for. We'd love for all of you to be part of it, so that when it is live, we can get some ideas of what that's going to look like. We've seen very slow trading on Radar. We don't know if that's because of their application. I suspect it's because it's just very nascent. They've only been out there a couple of weeks, and they haven't done any marketing whatsoever. And they've been a little bit slow to respond to some things and slow to learn. But they're great. I love them. Yes?
So as a relay, you have the control over which ERC20 tokens you decide to list on your exchange. What's going to be your criteria as far as, let's say I just create an ERC20 token without any sort of anything backing it substantially, what's going to be your decision behind that?
So there are a couple of answers to that. One is for the relay itself as a trading mechanism. We are listing the token pairs that have the highest volume initially. We are pulling out or keeping from trading any tokens that may be a security to avoid any legal issues. So that's my initial answer to that. We have a tool built into the system that allows you to send tokens to anyone. So you could, in theory, use that to trade your shitcoins if you so chose. And we wouldn't stop you because it's all in the back end. Okay. Other questions?
So one more.
Yeah.
Who in this system is able to do like IP logging and match that to the wallet addresses and whatnot? So
that's a good question. Can we identify individual users?
Yeah.
Yes, but so can any DApp you go to.
Let's see. So you...
we can identify IPs because it's the internet.
Will you generate logs for like tax purposes?
That's a good question. We haven't thought about it, to be honest with you. Yeah. Well, I mean, so we didn't. I take that back. That did cross my mind a while ago, and what it boiled down to for us is that since we're non-custodial, we're not being forced to, and since we're non-custodial, we may just not ever. I don't know. That's the kind of feature that I would
still get a term for people who want to be kosher.
Sure, yeah, totally. Yeah. I would support that, quite honestly. If we are able to track that, which, I mean, we certainly know what your account is, we can see...
It's more responsibility of the wallet. If they're the ones holding your tokens.
Possibly, but how does they know to go? They wouldn't know it's a trade versus a purchase or good point. So I mean, yeah, that's a feature I'm absolutely willing to take a look at. Because it did cross our mind, we kind of wrote it off early. Because, we're still Wild West. Yeah, it's Wild West. We're still very much, MVP type, alpha type phase. So I like the idea of that. I like being more responsible. We have tried to err on the side of being conservative, but regulator friendly. Because we think that that's how this market's going to mature. But because we're not custodial, we don't have any regulations foisted on us to our knowledge yet.
Yeah.
So far, so good. Yeah, if that's a feature request, I'm certainly open to it. Yeah.
So you're doing the order matching, you're finding. Do you know for sure if the trade actually consummated or not?
Yes.
Are there confirmations?
Yes.
Okay. So then you do know.
Yes.
You could keep a record.
Yes.
You may be required to. Okay.
Yes.
Besides the IP address, is there anything else, like a MAC address or?
I mean, we can figure out. It's a web interface, so anything that any website can figure out about you, we can figure out about you. We don't currently. The only thing that we are currently tracking is your address, your whatever's exposed by MetaMask, which by the way is only your default. MetaMask doesn't expose all of them, but the hardware wallets do expose all of them, and then you just choose the one you want to use. That's all that we're tracking currently.
Just curious.
So you are actually though taking fiat currency, right?
No.
You're not taking
only ERC20.
Only.
Only ERC20. Okay. Good question. So, this is sort of a breakdown of a lot of what we've already talked about. But peer-to-peer trustless trading, we plan on providing short selling and lending margin, all of that sort of stuff, as well as derivatives in the not too distant future, depending on how the dEX protocol and contracts and all of that evolve. And I've got a not so funny story to share about that when we get to the lessons learned portion. And we talked about aqueducts, so I don't need to necessarily beat that horse. So this is our tentative timeline right now. So we are very much in stage one, where we have built the relay. We are still refining it. We are in alpha, so it's going to be evolving as we go through alpha. It is a closed alpha. It's not yet public to everybody, but y'all aren't considered public, so you're welcome to take a look at it. We do also have an alpha version of Aqueduct that we will be expanding and developing over time. We plan on the next big step is going to be adding additional products based on dEX. Then we think it might be interesting to take some of those products that a lot of the relayers probably won't go after and widgetize them if we can in some way, so that it's just a plug and play kind of thing for relayers to just add short selling or derivatives, at least, maybe not short selling, but derivatives, those sorts of things that will use our back end. You'll see. And then eventually democratize and grow, see if we can expand across chain, that sort of stuff. And potentially also add in some BitTorrent style decentralization into the centralized infrastructure, which we'll see. Yes?
So by relayers, do you mean people that are using your Aqueduct protocol that are not you?
Yes.
Okay. So like you're one of the relays on the Aqueduct protocol, but you're saying you can support other people building their own relays?
Yes.
Okay. What do you mean by decentralized relay? Like what exactly is decentralized about your relay?
That's actually maybe not the best phrase.
Okay.
It is the relay itself is centralized.
Okay.
Yes. So what we had there actually originally was decentralized exchange. And you were like, oh, that's not really true. We're a relay, but that's what that is. Again, this deck was put together for people who don't.
Also, does Aqueduct collect the fees, or is it just the relay?
So no, Aqueduct does not itself collect fees. It is a mechanism by which we share liquidity and have fee-sharing agreements within the orders themselves to share fees for the actual trades that are executed over Aqueduct.
Okay. So if I were to create my own relay, I use Aqueduct, I don't have to like pay you.
Not to use it, but if you create your own relay and somebody creates an order on your book and you send it to us via Aqueduct and it gets taken on our book, then we share fees. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. Trucking along. So here's the big ask. We're looking for alpha testers and beta testers. We're looking for people who are interested in this space that want to keep in touch, because potentially if you know anybody at Amazon when they need to buy an exchange, whatever. We are, as I said, we're trying to be regulator friendly, so broker dealers who might be interested in getting a toe in this space, because we think there's a not zero chance that we might be forced to become a broker dealer. We wouldn't mind developing relationships with existing broker dealers now who might want to partner down the road. Advisors, investors, and one thing we left off here that I mentioned earlier is liquidity providers. If you want to be in this market and you want to be providing liquidity to a network of ERC 20 trading exchanges or relays, let me know, because we are interested in that, as is the 0x team itself. So you can check out our blog, which you can get to off our website, ercdex.com, or contact us directly. So this is our team currently. There are just 6 of us, but we're distributed. And I don't know why we went down there, but there are 6 of us. So, lessons learned. So that was the initial, here's who we are, here's how it works, here's everything. Any questions about that before we get into some lessons learned?
Do you know if anybody's traded any long-short pair tokens, or like inherently long one token and short the other token, and trade that pair token?
No, but that's one of our lessons learned. We got into designing our own derivatives products, and we got really far down that road. And a day or so, we'd spent maybe a month and a half, 2 months. And we designed all kinds of synthetic options and all this sort of stuff, and figured out that we thought we had to figure out. It included short selling certain securities. Actually, the specific idea I'm thinking of is for the short selling product, right? Short selling product is essentially over securitized a specific. I have to draw this out actually. I'm not going to bother. This is going to go down a rabbit hole. But essentially, we designed a security to do exactly what you're talking about, and then the next day, the YDX published their white paper and undercut everything we've done. Yeah. But if you want to have that conversation, I'd have to actually draw it for it to make sense in my own head so I can explain it. But no, I don't know of anybody out there that's doing that currently, other than possibly MakerDAO, which is a stable coin, which is its own thing, which is an interesting discussion. I'm going to get into that. So, lessons learned. Talent can come from anywhere. So, I pulled on my network to put this team together, but I also went into the community on Slack and found some really talented people. And we're all over the place. It's not unusual in this world in tech to be a distributed team, but we are in fact very distributed. And one of our teammates actually right now is on a flight to Bali, to Switzerland and then Bali, because she loves to travel, and we can get away with that in this space, so that's pretty cool. But some things that I would point out, how many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs and want to do something in this space? Okay. So maybe you already know this, but not that many people have experience writing Solidity contracts. And that's okay. Like, there are a handful of people that actually have done that, and they're good at that, or some of them are good at that. And you, for the most part, don't need a team of people who can do that. You need one person, maybe 2. The rest of your team, you have to think of as a business, just as any sort of business. So blockchain is interesting and it's got great utility, but at the end of the day, if you're building a startup, you're building a business. So you have to think of it that way. And so in that vein, I think it's important to prioritize smarts and flexibility and tenacity and all those sorts of things, especially in this space, because if you're interested in blockchain, you're probably already working in tech, and so you're used to the idea of disruption. What you may not be used to is disruption on a daily basis. coming out and changing the landscape. And I can't tell you how absolutely crestfallen we were when dYdX published their paper, because that we were going to do ICO. We had this all mapped out, and it was a great utility token. It wasn't a security. It made perfect sense. And we were like, we're off to the races. We're going to raise a few $1 million. We're going to make this happen. And that paper got published, and it was a rough day, very rough day. But you move on and you adapt. And at the end of the day, I think we'll be better off having something that's standardized. And by the way, I'm okay with not being associated with what the ICO markets have become. Like that, I'm fine with that. Ultimately, I think the ICO markets, that is the biggest definition of froth I've ever seen. And it will implode. We're already seeing a lot of those ICO tokens trading below their price immediately after the ICO. So,
and another thing that I think you mentioned, there's also a real premium on staying focused and executing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get distracted by the new shiny thing, the new shiny technology, the new shiny token, when you got to really focus on exactly what you're doing and executing on one thing. That becomes very, very important.
Yeah,
it just kind of gets back to the team.
Well, that's general startup advice that I'll give people. I've been in the startup world for a very long time, and you can tell when someone's a new entrepreneur when they don't want to share with you their idea, or they want you to sign an NDA. That's not how it works. Like, ideas are not worth anything. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but it all comes down to execution. And so, don't be afraid to share your ideas. In fact, you want people to hear your ideas because they are going to be your advocates. They're going to be your advisors. They're going to be your customers. Share your ideas. It's execution is where it's at. So, all right.
A quick question. What Slack are you talking about?
Which Slack specifically?
Yeah.
All of them. I'm not kidding. Get into as many as you can.
Like crypto Slacks.
Crypto. If you're looking to recruit in crypto, so while you don't need to be recruiting Solidity developers, you do want to recruit people who are inherently interested in crypto. Because if they glaze over when you're in meetings, like that's not going to help. Right, so they have to be inherently interested in crypto. So any Slack channel or Rocket Chat or whatever, everybody's moving to Rocket Chat now from Slack because of the ICO scams. But whatever community you can get into that is related to crypto, that's where you should be looking to meet these people. And this community, I'm not saying this to suck up to this room, but this community is full of really smart people. All of you guys, really smart. I mean. Seriously though, it's filled with really smart, inventive people. So use that, right? And just be aware that the people that aren't on your team are around you trying to upend you every day, and some of them will succeed. dYdX. So this just plays more on that particular theme that things are going to change. Another really painful thing to get used to in this space, if you're used to being in the startup space that is not on the blockchain, is that your code is going to be public. And your contracts will be seen. And so you have to be aware of that if you're going to be building moats around your idea, don't rely on them being your Solidity contracts. So be aware of that. Know your competition, leverage their weakness. This gets back to the idea of, hey, can't anybody stand up a relay? Yep, there have been individuals in their homes who have just stood up a relay and said, hey, I'm done. That will not survive. Absolutely not. So I know that person's weakness is team building, marketing, all of that. That's what we're going to attack. Building network. That's what we're going to attack. And that's how we're going to win. And then just be aware that the market's different. I think I've already harped on that a bit. So, another thing to think about as you're putting your product strategy together is that the entire technology stack that we're talking about here is kind of in beta at best. Okay? So, the things that you're expecting to work as sort of table stakes for your application to work may just not. And that sucks. So yeah, getting Trezor support may or may not happen. As an example, if you're trying to, I think the Trezor support thing was for MetaMask, but I'm not sure of that. And this one's really fun. So one of the big drawbacks to the way that 0x protocol works, all of our customers are going to deal with this, and all of any relayer's customers are going to deal with this. There are things that you have to sign with your wallet that are not human readable. And so you get one of these messages anytime you trade on any 0x platform. And that looks scary. Like, I wouldn't want to sign that. They are working to fix this. They're working directly with MetaMask to get this. And actually, there's an EIP, I think. I think there's needs in the EIP to get this fixed so that you have a human-readable message that you know what you're signing, but in the meantime, you're kind of trusting that you're signing the right thing. That sucks for everybody, and that's industry-wide. So we're very interested to see this get fixed. So if you don't have an idea that you want to go out and do your own startup and champion something, you can still get involved. There's lots and lots of ways to get involved. So this is from the parity issues list. Go out there, grab an issue, and see if you can fix it. I mean, it's open source. Oh yeah. And so here's a list of some of the things that one of our guys, Brandon, put together of what actually went into Metropolis, or I think the latest version of Metropolis, Byzantium. And you just have to know that your software is going to have to handle those changes, or know that it might be affected by those changes as they come up. Some good, some bad. You never know until it happens. So in this case, pretty good, right? That's block time. That looks pretty good. So Vitalik recently said that, with proof of stake, big changes of some form are maybe coming at some point. Okay, so this gets back to the ethical question. There are definitely coins out there we don't want to be associated with. This one that pops up here is one of my favorites, Sand coin. If you don't know, you gotta Google it. It's great. If you're looking for a cubic meter of high quality sand in Russia, get in some sand coin. So good. Yeah. All right.
To the Ponzi.
What's that?
To the Ponzi.
To the Ponzi. Yeah,
that's a great one.
That's right. Yeah, that was a good one. There are lots of parody.
It's a pyramid scheme based on the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah,
it's pretty. You almost want to play it, in all honesty.
Okay.
What they're talking up there? I'm curious about that.
Oh, I'm gonna let Brandon. So Brandon's gonna jump on for the Q&A. I'm gonna let you ask him about that because he is very opinionated about that. He's very opinionated about a lot of things. So give me just a minute. So yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna get Brandon on the horn, or I'll take us through the demo. Do you want to see the demo first, or you want to do the Q&A first? Demo. Okay. Of course. All right.
So what you guys are doing that, how do you bootstrap your company? What do you do?
Good question. So we bootstrapped basically. So I am a software consultant. I have a consulting company that's been around for years, and so I have a team of developers working on various projects. One of the developers and I initially got into this because let me take a step back. Part of the consulting company's sort of ethos is that we do the consulting work so that we can experiment and come up with our own startups and that we can spin out. And so ERC DEX is one of those. But the sort of genesis of it was not for ERC DEX. It was because we had an idea of essentially a marketplace that would match brands with ad agencies, and we figured that Ethereum would be a good medium of exchange there, and so we dug into that and went down the rabbit hole and we never came back, basically. So, but the short answer is the company has supported us, and honestly, the team is not paid full time. Like it's still kind of in its nascent stages. We are talking to equity investors and things like that. Okay. Demo. So this is running locally on my local machine. So forgive any big mistakes. We just added this walkthrough, so I figured it would be helpful to kind of help me demo it. So everything in the interface is based on the token pair. So it changes depending on the token pair that you're interested in. So you choose that right out of the gates up here to the left. We give you your wallet's immediate balance of that token pair. And you can actually do the drop down and see the various token pairs we're supporting. We can wrap and unwrap Ether. We talked about that, right? I mentioned it. Okay. Ether itself is not ERC 20 compliant, so you have to wrap it to make it compliant, and then you can trade it, and then you unwrap it, and you're good. But it is a transaction on the blockchain, so you have to actually manually do that. That's why we walk you through this part.
Where does it live when you do that?
It lives in the contract, in the wrapped Ether contract. Yep. And I believe that's a 0x contract. I'm 1% sure that it lives in a 0x contract.
What other things besides Ether are potentially wrappable?
What other things?
Yeah.
Anything you write a contract to wrap it.
So give me a flavor. What would be possible?
I mean, so it has to be on the Ethereum blockchain.
Okay.
So anything on the Ethereum blockchain, anything that can be transferred on the Ethereum blockchain, I think can be wrappable. But I'm not an expert there. I would look at Eric, maybe you know the answer to that. I don't know. No? Okay. What's the question about wrapping? Are you familiar with wrapping and unwrapping Ether?
No, this is completely news to me, but I mean, it seems completely reasonable to do.
Right. He was asking, what other things can you wrap and unwrap?
You can wrap almost anything. I mean, I don't see what would stop you. As long as you do the contract API, you have to consume it, like you have to wrap everything. Right. And it's effectively the adapter pattern.
Yeah. Right. If you're writing the contract, it can be anything. If you're not writing a contract to do that, then you have to find out what's out there, what's already written to wrap things and all that. So here's the tool that allows you to just directly send ERC20 tokens. Like MetaMask allows you to send Ether directly. This allows you to send ERC20 tokens. Yes?
So if you have an account here, then do you fund that? You know, or you integrate with wallets? How does that work?
No, so you never have an account with us. You are effectively anonymous to us. You are an address. So you have your own wallet that you're using. So I'm using MetaMask here. We are going to be adding support for hardware wallets. Currently, I believe Mist and Parity are both supported, or they're in different phases of being supported right now. But that's it. So you have your own wallet on your own machine, and that's the whole point of this being decentralized. Yeah.
So if you're through Ether Delta right now, you're technically transferring your Ether to a contract. Are you going to? Well, you kind of have to do the same thing, but are you planning on doing that more seamlessly, or?
So the way that it works is that you set allowances. So when you come to our site, I'll show you how that works. Actually, give me a second. I'll come right back to that. Sending tokens. You get notifications when trades settle, for example, and then just how to switch your account. You click on that thing, switch. And that's it. So, getting back to your question, you'll see I have here with rep, I have this little red lock. That means that I've not set the allowance for the 0x exchange contract to be able to trade rep for me. Right? So I now have to actually execute a transaction on the blockchain.
So on Ether Delta, whenever they're referring to deposits, they're actually talking about the allowance, right?
Sorry, say that again?
On Ether Delta, they're using the verbiage deposit, and they're referring to the allowance, right, in that case.
No, so allowance, I believe, is the 0x thing. I'm not sure how Ether Delta works. Okay. I'm not very honest with you. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. That's great. Oh, that's right. So that didn't work because there's an issue with test RPC. Running two environments to test RPC with the same account, the nonces get out of sync, and so I can't actually do anything with this account. Let me switch accounts real quick. Sorry. I'm not used to doing this full screen behind me on a projector. So I'm going to switch accounts and see if and I don't have any way I have there. Oh, really? Okay, well, apologies for this. We just added this walkthrough today. Still learning how that works. That's really annoying. I'm going to fix that. Okay, so you see here, I'm not going to do this on full screen, so it doesn't do that. So anyway, you saw that now I can trade RAP. It was locked otherwise. So if I were to try to trade something that is already locked, limit order, let's say one for a price of 1.5, it'll say you don't have enough GNT allowance in the parlance of 0x. You don't have enough GNT allowance to be able to trade it. And so you click here to set the allowance, which gives us permission to trade, which gives the 0x contract permission to trade. Yeah, so.
How do I know I'm getting the best possible exchange rate for whatever pair I'm looking at? So you have your platform, and like, so today if I'm trying to trade, I would check my market cap, and then I would look and see, then I would use the platform that makes the most sense. How do I easily tell that with the platform?
That's a great question. So this is something, this is a feature that just came up in discussion today. Is that, and we will likely implement this, you will go into your settings, choose which centralized exchange you want to get a quote from, and we'll display that on the order book. We'll show you, like, how does this deviate from a centralized exchange, and you can choose which one you want. That does not yet exist.
Did you actually show a list of prices for different exchanges so that we could see what the price trends are? You know, like 10 of them side by side.
Could we? Yeah, we haven't really thought about doing that, but yeah.
Kind of nice.
It's a double-edged sword for us, right?
Yeah. Another question, if I wanted to set up a trade bot to operate in this environment, it's pretty easy to do that.
Yep.
So what would I need to?
So the API is public. So you just use the API. It's the same public API that we're using for our client.
How do price fluctuations in ZRX affect your business?
ZRX, the token itself.
Yeah.
Since that's how we collect our fees, we want it to go up.
If ZRX quadruples, then everyone's trading commissions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the fees are set as a percentage of the trade.
Well, we haven't settled on a specific fee structure yet. But ideally, we want our holdings to appreciate, of course.
And you're holding probably a lot of ZRX.
We're holding some ZRX, yeah. But that becomes then a treasury discussion.
Yeah.
Which, some of it will hold, some of it will hold.
How do you guys consider? I mean, it is considered a proof of stake.
Proof of stake. Proof of stake doesn't really come into play.
No.
Because we're not mining anything. All we are is a trading platform. We're not mining anything.
So when you're asking for liquidity, is that ZRX that you're asking for? Or?
We're asking for people who want to be market makers on the platform.
Oh.
We're going to enter a whole bunch of orders and just be liquidity for the platform and take advantage of the different opportunities that they arise.
So could that be like a bank, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Could it be a liquidity market?
Sure.
And then is the token sale off the table?
For us?
Yeah.
For this? Yeah, it is. We have looked at, and I've kind of alluded to this earlier, we've looked at the possibility of doing a stable coin, but that's very, very early stages. My inclination is that we won't be able to do it. It's just not possible. But that's the latest conversation we've had about if we were to do some kind of public offering of some kind of token, it would be in that space.
The last thing, you kind of semi-joked about Amazon coming in. If that were to happen, what would they be actually acquiring about?
They would be acquiring our software. They would be acquiring our network. Sorry?
It's open source now, except for Aqueduct, I guess.
No, the DApp is not open source. No, it's not. In Aqueduct, the underlying Aqueduct is a client to connect to our server. The server itself is not open source.
So if they bought it, would become centralized then in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it already is centralized. That portion already is centralized.
Do you think, I saw a rumor that said Amazon was thinking about accepting Bitcoin, so you think they're trying to do that to kind of legitimize it and then enter into this space?
Sure. I think they're looking at it as another way to make money. It's low friction for them to, well, I don't know their infrastructure, but I would say it could be low friction for them to accept that, so why not?
Plus they can hold some too.
Right.
Have you considered using something like Raiden? Because the gas fees are really pretty high.
Yeah, so Raiden, what we're talking about is state channels essentially, and it is possible, but that's not the 0x. So I could see an argument for that absolutely in this space, but that's not how 0x is structured. That could be the future generation. Question? Yeah.
Are you going to log IP addresses and whatnot?
No. Currently, no, we're not planning to. Let me get Brandon on here real quick in case. Because there was a question somebody had specifically to keep. Oh, Veritasium.
I have a question. When you guys order, is it like transaction network? What do you call it?
I'm not sure.
When you place an order, does it actually call?
No. What is the question? His question is when you place an order, does it, and I assume you're saying make an order specifically.
Like when you put a limit order on the order book, right? Right.
When you're adding a limit order to the order book, it does not call a smart contract.
So you don't have to pay the gas for that. So when the taker like executes an order,
that does.
So you have to take like, what do you get a MMS notification or something?
So you get a MMS notification for signing. I'll show you what that looks like. Hey Brandon, you there? I'm just now realizing we don't have any volume for you. Let me see if I can run it through. I'm not sure whether you'll make this work. We had one question about Veritasium and why you don't like it. Can you share your insights on that? Because it's a scam, his answer is. Volume control. Can you expand on why that's a scam? There's no way they're going to make good on what?
The crash. Are you the one doing this? About for testing?
Oh wait, this is interesting.
Are you asking about that?
Yeah.
It's like just betting on the crash. That's obviously it.
Brandon? Okay, well, we'll leave Brandon alone. He doesn't like Veritasium. I can put you in touch with him. That's the best way to answer. Other questions?
So you want to post some information in Meetup about how to...
Yes. Yeah. So if you're interested in signing up for the alpha, actually we have a beta sign up on the website. Well, we'll just know that if you signed up between now and let's say tomorrow at this time, we'll put you on the alpha list. Go to the website ercdex.com. There's a box at the bottom. You can enter your email address and check the box to say, make me a tester, and we'll add you to the tester list. Well,
Do you have to have 0x tokens to get started in the system?
Yes. Right now you do. That's one of the, sorry?
You have to go out somewhere else to get them and then...
Right now, the way it's set up is yes. But we're working on getting that to be not the case. The problem is we want to be able to just hang some DRX and say, here, go with this, but it's wide open to civil attacks. There's no way we can know who you are since we don't know who you are. So it's kind of it's a tricky problem. Yeah. So we're working on that. We're trying to build the first one.
Like your idea was great.
Thank you. Yes.
Is there a benefit or an opportunity for you all to have multiple distinct editions of your relay system? In a sense to make it multi-master?
We've thought about that, and the short answer I think is no. We don't see a benefit from that because it would effectively dilute our efforts. Because if we have multiple instances, I assume you mean not from an architectural scalability standpoint, but from a business front standpoint. Is that what you mean? From an architectural scalability standpoint, we do. We're using Docker. It scales ad infinitum as it needs for demand. Okay. From a business front standpoint, where we're essentially rebranding, the only play that we've got there that we are going to take advantage of is making a shape-shift style front for it, so that this is sort of our trader-friendly, like you want to get in, you want to be trading and looking at all kinds of stuff, and trading lots of different pairs, whatever. And then separately, we've got something that is more mom and pop friendly. That's like, I just have this and I want this, make it happen. And it just does the market order the best price it can find, and that's it.
Kind of like Coinbase.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that we are going to do, but it's going to be essentially a sister brand of the ERC DEXCHANGE.
One thought on market orders, just because people don't realize that there's a big gap that can really get screwed.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if there was a plus and minus guard on the market order. Just a little feature request. I wouldn't do a market order myself, but like for people to do them. It's really so you can sell it for zero price.
That might have some technical issues, but it's worth looking into. The way that we recommend people to, or the way that, not we recommend, but that I've seen recommended for people to kind of protect themselves from those sort of surprise ones, is setting short lifetime on the limit order, which is not a great solution. It is a solution. So that is something.
The mom and pop thing, you'll get real surprised if they sell it. It's like 1 cent.
Yeah. True. That's the market we're in.
I'll be on the other side of the trade.
So now we're getting into the conversation of why we need a stable coin, why that product is interesting to us, right? But it may also be fool's errand.
Have you ever heard of any like dark pools trying to get into this space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they already are in this space in the centralized world, and we entirely expect that this will happen in our space too. Eventually, as it matures, I don't think it will happen in our space too. Other questions?
Is it the same dark pools that are running big exchanges?
I don't know if they're dark, I can't see them.
Good question.
Anybody want a sticker?
I want a sticker.
Sticker?
Oh, sure.
Yes, question.
So as far as like creating liquidity for this whole thing, basically I would send Ether to a relay, which is a smart contract. So it sits in.
You hold your assets the entire time, with the exception of wrapping, which, depending on how you look at it, you're not holding that asset anymore. You're getting wrapped ETH, which trades 1-for-1 for Ether.
So it's in my wallet, wrapped. But
yes.
So how does it automatically? How does it work to create liquidity if it's a relay? If I want to put money on the relay and make like a little bit of money inside, how does that automatically work? Or how do I keep my money sending it from my wallet? You know?
So.
Smart contract.
I guess I'm not understanding your question. So you asked kind of two different questions that don't fit together as I heard them. How do I make money, and how does liquidity trade?
I thought one place that you want people to, you're asking for to participate, create liquidity for these markets.
Yeah.
Right. So I would assume that people that are creating liquidity would make some kind of money off of that, right?
Sure.
So, and that Ether, is that in a smart contract?
No, it's in their own wallet. And they buy low, sell high on our book. Lots of orders, buying low, selling high. Making orders, taking orders. That's it.
You have to be active. They can't be passive.
Active. But yeah, and so the idea there is, ideally, this is somebody who is willing to build potentially an algorithmic system that will trade with us on a more long-term basis, and that we can expose maybe Opera and some other tools to them to help facilitate the trade.
What would you consider a minimum requirement?
At this point, with the volumes we've seen, it's very low. For a traditional market maker, it's next to nothing. But I think if someone were to come in with 7 figures, that would be substantial in this market.
5 figures?
It might be a good start, yeah. Yeah, I think this space is so nascent that you could really move things without trying to. Any other questions? Anybody else want stickers? Okay, I guess we're there. Thanks, guys.